What's going on, everybody? Liam O'Reilly, Vermont economic realtor with Jerry Riley Real Estate. I hope you're doing well. Redfin's weekly market update from last week said that right now is a much better time to buy a home than it was the past couple months because mortgage rates have come down, more sellers are dropping their prices, leading to a more favorable housing market for home buyers. And I think basically by any metric you look at, this is true. Rates have come down. More sellers are cutting their list price than they have been in the past, at least as far as Redfin has recorded it. So overall, it's as far as the recent history has gone. It's not a bad time to buy a home, but really, not a lot of people care that right now is not a bad time or is better than it was a couple months ago. What most people are interested in, what most people care about, what you care about most likely is, will there be a better time to buy a home in the future? Now, one thing I wanted to say right at the beginning of this video is I think 2024, and this is the hard truth of the 2024 housing market, is that there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. I think there are going to be people who overpaid for their home in 2023, maybe even 2022, who fall on hard financial times, have to sell, and can't get their money back out of it. I think it's unlikely that we see significant price growth in 2024. My base scenario is that home prices stay flat, but maybe they go up or down by around 5%. There's not going to be anything major, and your specific market is going to be very different. I know here in Vermont, home prices tend not to fall as far as the median home price. It doesn't drop out. The At least like when you look back into 2008, the median home price didn't fall. It didn't significantly drop out. The floor was still there. And that's because there's a lack of inventory. And I think the markets that are most at risk for a significant price decrease are markets that have built a ton of homes across the country. Those are the ones that I think are most at risk. But going back to winners or losers, even here in Vermont, we aren't seeing the median home price fall, but the market has changed. It really has. It's way different than it was even this summer, where there's a lot more sellers dropping their list price. There's a lot of people who listed their home too high and can't get it. There's a lot of people who listed their home and the comparables say that it should sell for this amount, but for whatever reason, the market just isn't there and they're forced to drop their price. They're forced to sell. So it's really a very different market than it was a few months ago. That's not to say that multiple offer situations are completely gone because there are still here. A lot of people are buying homes and competing with other buyers for those properties, but overall, it's a much slower market than what we've seen over the past couple years. So, what do I mean when I say there's going to be winners and losers in this market? Basically, there's going to be people who overpay for their home. There's going to be people that maybe they were in a multiple offer situation. They bid up over asking. They were really competing for the home because it's something that they really wanted. And they could get screwed in 2024 because home prices, they could come down by maybe around 5% nationally. I think that's a pretty realistic scenario just based on where the supply and demand dynamics are sitting right now. You know, if you're a forced seller, if you bought a home and you didn't have a long-term mindset with that purchase, you could get screwed. But I also think there's going to be major winners in this housing market, and I think there's people buying great deals right now. There's people buying great deals right now in Vermont, even though our median sales price hasn't dropped. When you look at that data, it hasn't dropped. That doesn't mean that there's not great deals out there. That doesn't mean that you can't find a motivated seller who is willing to sell their home for under market value because it's been on the market for 60 days. They don't have the time to wait around for that buyer to come by, which might not be till after New Year's with the time of year that we're in right now, approaching the holiday season. So the tough truth is that in 12 months from now, I mean, we could be looking back 12 months from now and look at this video and say, wow, that was a great time to buy right now. Or we could be looking back and say, thank God I waited because it's a way better time to buy 12 months from now. But the real thing is that no matter what situation plays out a year from now, there are going to be people who lost in this housing market. Even if home prices go up, they're not going to go up significantly, but they could go up or stay flat. this next year, or they could come down. And I don't think they're going to come down that significantly in most markets, at least not around here in Vermont, but they could come down slightly. And there's going to be people who got screwed. There's going to be people who found that motivated seller and bought a great deal and have the ability to generate a ton of equity with the purchase that they bought. So, all right, let's get into these articles. Enough rambling around. The weekly market update. Is the best time to buy since mid-September as mortgage rates fall and sellers drop their prices. Now, one thing I wanted to point out right away is if you watched my last video about the divergence between the bond market and the mortgage market, if we take a look here, this is from last week before the bond market dropped another 20 basis points. We see here that Redfin is reporting that mortgage rates are off their 2-decade high of 8% to around 7.4%. Obviously still high, but down significantly as bonds came down over that week as well, over the week of November 9th. But then we come to the most recent market update, which is this week. We see the exact same reporting, a high of 8% down to the 7.4% range. And the reason why this is significant, and I encourage you to go watch my previous video about this, about these rates, because I think it's really influential, is the 10-year Treasury, which mortgage rates historically follow, dropped by 20 basis points. And mortgage rates were pretty much unchanged. I would have expected mortgage rates to be down to 7.25%, maybe 7% with the drop in this 10-year Treasury and the way that things are trending, but that's not what we're seeing. And if you want to learn more about that, watch my previous video. This we're going to talk about what's going to happen in the upcoming year. So the reason why I don't think home prices are going to why home prices are going to completely fall out like we saw in 2008. Again, the more I read about 1980, the more I think that this housing market is most similar to that housing market. Of course, things are different. The geopolitics are different. The way the Federal Reserve has influenced the mortgage market and the housing market and our overall economy is way different than it was back in 1980. But if we look at the overall home buyer conditions, we are still as unaffordable as home prices are now. We still have a more affordable housing market based on where home prices and interest rates are than they had in 1980. And home prices were flat throughout the 1980s. So affordability, although it's tough, it makes things really hard for home buyers and home sellers out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that home prices are going to come down. If we've seen periods of unaffordability that were worse than what we're in now. And if we look at the median sales price, that's really what we're seeing. So we saw it come up across the summer, and then it's slowly been trending down, and now we've basically flattened out. We're up 4% year over year, and I expect this to stay pretty flat at least through the winter. And the big test for this median sales price is going to be if active inventory starts to rise, and we could see that when we look at new listings. One of the things that Redfin reported on here is that new listings were up. Right here. New listings of homes for sale were up 3% from a year earlier, the biggest increase in 2 years, and just the second increase since July of 2022. So more people are listing their homes. Let's go down to the chart here of new listings. So, it's still down. This time of year, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's less people listing their homes than there are during the summer, but it's more than it was last year. So more people, as the economy gets tougher, they're looking to sell their home for whatever reason. Maybe they want to move to be closer to family. Maybe they want to do it before they fear that their home prices are going to drop and as the market changes. I mean, I've talked a lot about where I think the market's going, but really nobody knows, and it could get worse. The market has changed significantly since the summer. Sellers are accepting offers well under list price. Many of my buyers are getting homes for well under list price. And it's just a different market that has sellers a little bit more freaked out than they were in 2020 and 2021, where they could just list their home, get multiple offers, and be on their merry way. So if we see new listings trend above where they were last year, above this historic norm, or even at that historic norm, but the home buyers aren't there because of the high mortgage rates. We look at active inventory for this next chart right here, active homes for sale. You see we're still well below the 2022 level. which I thought was really interesting because active inventory has been trending up. And I think we're going to see this chart do the same thing that it's done in years past, where the holiday season comes, people aren't listing their homes. And then we're going to see active inventory dip down. But I think we could see active inventory around 2021 levels, this blue line, which I think could impact home prices as we move into the future. That's going to be a really important thing to watch, as well as what mortgage rates do. And again, mortgage rates don't necessarily follow the Federal Reserve. So you'll see all these headlines about the Federal Reserve likely to pause, the Federal Reserve likely to cut rates next year. That can make mortgage rates come down, and it probably will make mortgage rates come down, but it might not be as much as people are thinking because of that divergence. And it's going to be important to watch. So anyway, is it going to be a better time to buy a home a year from now? It could be, but I think the real thing to take away from this video is that regardless if it's a better time to buy a home a year from now or if it's a worse time to buy a home for a year from now, there's people getting great deals right now. There will be people getting great deals in 2024, and there's going to be people who bought bad deals right now and bad deals in 2024. So I think if you're looking for a home, if you want to get a home, get a great deal, find a motivated seller, get yourself a solid property, and don't overpay for it right now, especially if you don't have a long-term time horizon of 5 or more years. If you need help with that anywhere across the country, reach out to me directly. All my contact information is in the description. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this video. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.